Bliss is how we are conceived. See? The blissful state of a baby, newborn, is that bliss. And bliss is where we return as well. When we breathe our last, we return into bliss. The bliss is what we experience when we touch the ground of consciousness. The bliss is what we experience when we are put in touch tangibly with beauty, because these are synonymous. Love also is synonymous to bliss. These are all terms, all words for the same reality which lays at the deepest substratum of creation. Creation springs forth out of that.
What really changed my mind and brought me to come here was when I was listening to the Seeing Through the Heart meditation. And you said, the purpose of life is bliss. And I was like, wait, what? No one told me. I don't know what that feels like. I certainly know the other side of the polarity very well. But I knew like it was time. It was time for me to have a new experience with bliss, with pleasure, with even joy has been something very small. And I was in what is frequently called a twin flame journey with this man that came into my life that I had known for a very long time. I'd known him since I was 15, but he came back into my life much later. Long story short with that is blew me open to unconditional love in a way that I never knew what love was before that moment. And was taken completely on a journey into complete darkness. This person, while I only saw them maybe a handful of times in person, if that, it became such a spiritual connection. He was there constantly. This person was there 24/7. I'd wake up, they're there. And as it continued to move along, it became more and more clear that this person had malintent, evil intent. Would come into my dreams. I was psychically attacked a lot. I was doing plant medicines, and I had an experience that really shifted my perception. And that is, I fully saw the Antichrist. And I'm not saying that in a way of like I saw a form of a devil and came and it was like this. It was like every part of my body, my heart, my nervous system, my soul, understood the frequency of malevolence in a moment that stained me, that no person should really know. It's like I ate the whole fucking apple. I got possessed by Lilith, where even though my heart was wide open for this person, it felt like she shut my heart, and I became pure mind, and I understood exactly how a psychopath thought, and pure power, pure just like that transactional power. And I know I've been in a study of power. I've been in a study of understanding just this other side of the coin. I am a psychotherapist, and my practice became full of other situations like this. Also religious abuse, cult abuse, everything abuse, narcissistic abuse, psychopathic abuse. And in some ways I became an expert at this, not by choice, but by experience. But for me, it was the spiritual abuse. And ultimately what had to happen to shift this is why this story feels like it's coming to this deep, deep conclusion for me. What shifted it truly was when I decided it was no longer okay for me to be abused in any way. that some part of me came to life that in the dream space and astral planes and plant medicine spaces, I would observe me do things back. And it was like this weird thing of like, will I allow myself to be abused or will I attack back? And then I did, and realized I could do things and was fairly good at it. And this person slowly but surely got the message, even though it was an ongoing war for a long time. I finally came to the conclusion it was no longer necessary for me to be in that war because just certain things started shifting. Long story short, I'm at this place now because this is all this last 4 years of this jumbled story of intensities and chaos. And I feel deeply reconciled in so many ways because I learned so much about myself. In some ways I became very strong. I don't understand, because this person, I don't feel as much in my field anymore. Still there sometimes. I can scan a room and know where darkness is. I can feel that I don't know will ever go away, but there's this part of me that feels like, is there a severance that can happen? Is there's like this final finale of a severance that I truly crave? Because there's no reason for his existence in my world to my liking and thinking. Or am I caught in a place where I have not been able to really reconcile my own duality? Because there'll be moments, even in medicine, where my heart is like, I can feel just the tension of the opposite so deeply, where it's like, oh my God, I just wish she'd fucking kill me. And not die, but like break it. Because it's like that level of intensity, and I can hold a lot, and I can process a lot, and I can do a lot. But there's something where I just want my mind to be right with this. I want to know if there's if maybe I'm asking for the grace of the divine to just give me that grace of the severance, because I've done every single thing I can do as a human person. Or am I to just deeply surrender to that there is still an alchemy that I haven't quite like touched, even though I touch it, but it just never happens. I feel like I get so close. So I'm at that marathon line and I just want to cross. God, I hope all that made sense.
Yeah, of course it all makes sense. It all makes perfect sense. Perhaps the first thing that I'd like to reflect back to you, just as a kind of maybe reassurance, that you'd be surprised how in the earlier years when I went public, I often had, back in the days when I still would have one-on-one sessions with people, either in person or online, right? Several women in particular came to reach out for help. Maybe not in exactly circumstances that you have described, but very similar. Some of them would be, for example, fatal attraction, inability to cut, seeing that it's malignant, seeing that it's unhealthy, seeing clearly, understanding on a mental, intellectual level, right? But unable to end this, living prisoners of this kind of connections, relationships. And in most cases, of course, I wouldn't say that in most cases, I shouldn't say that in most cases that these psychopathic tendencies on the part of those who are, let's say, the ones with whom these connections were entered, in most cases voluntarily. But if help to be offered, we had to work from the level of consciousness. And I have seen how difficult that is. Truly encountered that difficulty because the person sees it clearly, but this invisible tentacles attach, the psyche to the experience for it to be repeated. So when, of course, this has been recognized, first, let's say, as someone who is there, has been asked, given that position, given that license, right? Because that when someone reaches out, it comes with a license, right? Because I don't work as a therapist. It's a very different work. So that recognition would be then conveyed, related, and it will, it simply will do miracles. But I'm not saying that it's in your case because it's in the past. You've lived that, right? You largely overcome that, but you still feel there is something there that you would like to, let's say, have that, like being freed from that completely and utterly. So let's maybe speak to that, okay? So what is important to understand is that in all our relationships, all of them without exceptions, there are these relationships that are truly could be spoken of in terms of being karmic, in a sense that something, a very large portion, is being worked out. Something that is literally being worked out in this life, in this setting, in this situation, only through this particular relationship. In most or majority of cases, this is delivered by our nearest and dearest. It is proverbial, and we speak about it repeatedly. So there are certain classical archetypal relationships. For example, mother-daughter, right? Mother-son, father-son, siblings, right? And so forth. So, in other words, the nearest bound by blood, so to speak, where the immediacy of the situation, growing up with someone or being brought up by someone, right? The first lessons we learn in life, being made by these people, right? The largest impact on the way we grow up is by those who are in whose care we are. Then goes the first love, right? The first friendships, right? All this. So the intensity of these connections, the intensities of these relationships are all carrying this, let's say, now we look at it from that more detached perspective of a spiritual aspirant. They are karmic. Some information is delivered through which we learn about ourselves. So really, there is this relationship, there is these experiences, whatever they are. But in the process, we learn something which is fundamental to our well-being. Well-being from a capital B. Fundamental to the evolution of our psyche. So when that perspective, when we have that shift in perspective and understanding, then there is no such thing as wanting to disentangle from someone or wanting to cut it, because that in itself doesn't work like that. We say we want to cut it. Yes, do cut it. In fact, it's time to cut it. You see? But if it's not delivered fully, if there is still some frequencies working out themselves out, then all this cutting is going to be more like a blunt saw stuck in that, what we want to cut, a bloody, messy affair. So understanding here is paramount to the freedom from all this, what otherwise can rob us of peace and whatever else there is that comprises life well lived. So some of these interactions, some of these relationships are there. In your case, it was in a very dramatic way, in the way that, like how you described, and of course it's in, I can't say much to that, right? This encounter with the darkness, encounter with the, right, malignant, malevolent energy. It doesn't have to be. It can be encounter with someone who is not, but the experience is as hellish as anything, right? We know there are plenty of examples out there, some of them more classical, canonical, and they come in the limelight when people cannot live without each other constantly, and then they become the worst enemies of each other. You know, they not just at each other's throat, but they literally it's a bizarre thing to witness, but this is a karma in motion, in action, something working itself out. What is working itself out? You see? Yes, we can see it from the place of settling the debts. We can see it from the place of that, let's say, not so human, not so nice, right? It's very, very clinical perspective, that it's simply setting the record straight, paying the bills, as it were, right? Something accumulated, not nice, but have to do that. Or we can look at it from more of a positivistic perspective. We're kind of turning this to our advantage, that this is the greatest possibility of learning something about ourselves, where the very, very dramatic setting, encounter, negativity even, brings the best out of us, without which maybe, in terms of the evolutionary unfoldment, things will not unfold in the way they are. You see? So, when such dramatic events in our life take place, as in the case of encountering something that truly can put us in touch directly with the darkness, this in itself has the tremendous capacity for healing, deepest healing as well. Yes, it can topple us down, it could gobble us up. There's this danger. But in the sense, every heroic journey, right, in terms of the working of the myth, in terms of what myth exemplifies, is always accompanied by the possibility of a complete and utter corruption, complete and utter fall, complete and utter that where will be, effectively speaking, a true capitulation to one's purpose. So again, do these beings exist out there? And encountering these beings, and let alone being in contact, in relationship with these beings, you see? This is a very problematic and complex question here. What is the depth of our psyche? How far we can go? At the pedestrian conversation, it's very convenient to have the archetypal kind of characters that we cast out and turn into scapegoats. See? It's very, very convenient to have Hitler in history. It's a very convenient figure. It's very convenient to create monsters in our day and age, in our life, because it somehow exempts us from any self-examination of what we carry in our psyche as a potential. So that this is why the homecoming here can be spoken of in terms of that, in terms of the like Homeric, let's say, Iliad and Odyssey, what Odysseus had to go through in his homecoming back to Ithaca. It's a very, very uncomfortable process in terms of the arriving to the all-embracing aspect of ourselves. So what I'm inviting you to see this for having had perhaps the chance to encounter that, what you know is there, but also knowing, and making the difference, knowing, being able to tell where the light and where the darkness is, not being gobbled by that. You see? So this is very important, maybe lessons someone will certainly not wish for one's child or for one's dearest. But if it happened to you and you lived through that and living through that to whatever degree, as that also acts as an impetus for your evolution. As you have said, this cannot be discarded. It can only be bounced off to grow. One thing I can tell you reassuringly, that this work in particular that has this aspect, has this capacity to heal consciousness at the deepest, most fundamental level. And it happens not at the level of going and looking for this, let's say, what happened to us, how it happened and all that self-examination and kind of going into these anatomy classes of, dissecting and looking into. No. It happens by everything is being reabsorbed into the light of our awareness. Everything is being reabsorbed. Nothing is there that can be not reabsorbed into that. Because that's what consciousness is. Consciousness has no other. At least from the monistic perspective, light is a singular. And that light is what illumines all our experiences. Illumines everything, every faculty. Every darkest corner is illumined by that. So the true spiritual awakening and the true spiritual realization is always accompanied by meeting all these aspects within oneself. Some of them are nothing short of horrifying. Nothing short of horrifying. In fact, if everything is rosy, one should be really alert and vigilant. If everything is spick and span, it's literally like suspense movie. I guarantee it's a Hitchcock. It's a very, 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 very well orchestrated, very well scripted. Suddenly music goes down and conversation sounds casual. Recipe for disaster. See? Something else is lurking beneath that. So this is what, let's say, what you have shared. And you sitting and asking this question and falling on the impulse on life here, the purpose of life is bliss. The purpose of life is indeed bliss. Because this is a substratum. Bliss is a substratum of all experiences. That's what the Hindu Sat Chit Ananda or the Vedic Sat Chit Ananda. Being, consciousness, bliss. Everything taking place in that substratum. And of course, at the level of these aforementioned frequencies, patterns of consciousness, where consciousness takes itself for the patterns, you see? That's where that myriad of whole of mirror of identities begins. But bliss is where we return. To whatever degree in a deep sleep, deepest rest there. There's some bliss there. Bliss is how we are conceived. See? The blissful state of a baby, newborn, is that bliss. And bliss is where we return as well. When we breathe our last, we return into bliss. The bliss is what we experience when we touch the ground of consciousness. The bliss is what we experience when we are put in touch tangibly with beauty, because these are synonymous. Love also is synonymous to bliss. These are all terms, all words for the same reality which lays at the deepest substratum of creation. Creation springs forth out of that. And it is that. But of course, for the variety's sake, for the entertainment of that, for the plot, for the hide and seek, right? For that Hitchcock effect, for that suspense, it's all thrown into the mix. See? If you were, for example, or will be one day, who knows, to write a script for a movie, you don't need to sit and suck that pencil for hours. You just lay it all out, what happened to you, right? Life, based on life stories, event, right? TV drama. See? And make some bucks along the way. So just recycle that. It's the best way. Be honest and recycling it all.